In one of the discussions, I called out the colors that I plan to use in my tone and manner. And I also had color chips, and it happened to be these three images here. Now, you might have had a single image, whatever, okay? Maybe you just had a really simple color chip. I'm going to place these in my InDesign project for nothing more than to be able to use the eyedropper to click on these, and I can get different values, tones and values, or even what we might call tints and shades of my um, tone and manner colors. So let's go back to InDesign. I'm going to go to my layers, and right now if I open, you'll see everything that we've created so far is on headline. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this layer color chips. And the order of this can really be up to you. I'm going to leave this order at the top, but you can move these around. Okay, so I'm going to make sure color chips is selected. Then I can close this layer. We're going to use our grabber tool, and I'm just going to move my page over a little bit. We are going to go up to the File menu, and we will find Place. And I'm going to, I don't have anything selected, but I'm going to take the check away of Replace Any Selected Item. And we can look at the show import options if you want. Okay, and that's just going to let you know if there's layers or alpha channels or whatnot. So we can take this off for right now. And let's find our folder that we're using for our root level. Yours obviously will be different than mine. So tone and manner images. Here are my three images. So I'm just going to command click these. So I have all three selected, and then we will open. And I'm just going to go over to the left hand side, and there's three here. So I'll click once. There's the first one. Click, and 3 times. So these are of different sizes, which is no big deal right now. Okay, so let's just go ahead and move these. And what's important here is you'll note that when I select an image, okay, if I click off the image and then click on the image and move it, it moves as a whole. Take a look at the border. All right. This little box is for adding, editing your corners, for getting different corner styles, and you can experiment with that. Now you see this little registration point. If I click the registration point, you'll notice that the bounding box changes. And if I click, I'm moving the image inside of the bounding box. And that takes a little getting used to, but just keep in mind every element in this program is inside of a bounding box. And you can use the bounding box to crop what's inside, and you can also use the bounding box to scale what is inside. And you can do the two independently. Otherwise, what's inside and the bounding box can be scaled independently. All right, so I am going to do a Command Z. I'm going to select my orange image here because it's larger. And I want to go over to my transform properties, and I'm going to use a relative. So instead of guessing absolutely, and I guess I could click here, and I'll see that the width and the height is 185 and 154. So I'll use that to my advantage. So instead of using a relative in guessing, let's go ahead and 185, 154. Let's click, and we'll type in 185, and this is not linked right now, and 54. And I can just click anywhere to set this here. Okay. Now I have changed the size of the box, but not the image. All right. So now I'm going to click on the image part, and I'm going to have to remind myself 185, 154. Okay. So we'll go 185 and 154. And we now will have our images pretty much the same size. I want to move my image, so I'll deselect it. I'll make sure when I click on the image I get this bounding box. Okay, and now I can move them. Now there are other ways to scale your images. So if I select my image and I click on this corner and I hold the command key, then I can scale my image and my bounding box at the same time. All right, so just keep in mind, working with your place content, especially images, you have a bounding box, you have the actual content. You can scale them together, you can scale them separately, okay? Now, with that being said, you also might want to experiment. When I click on my image and I look at my properties, you will see frame fitting. And you can change the size of your frame, change the size of your image, and you can use these different options to change the frame relative to the image relative to the frame. And you can even use auto fit, okay? So you might want to experiment with using frame fitting a little bit. All right, being said, let's go ahead now and we're going to use one of our color chips to color our dot. Now I'm going to use the blue. You can use whatever color you want. So I'm going to select my chip. We'll go and get our eyedropper, and now I'm going to make up my mind which tint or tone, or I should say, or the value of blue. So I'm going to go with something kind of bright in here. Let's go right there. Okay. All right, so I like that. Let's go and get our select tool. And now what we're going to do is click on our color chip, and you'll see that our color, okay, is at I should say, here's the color that we are adding. My menu went away here, so I'm going to bring my menu back. So here's the color which we have just added, and I want this color to be one of the colors that I have available. And you'll notice these are just the default colors that are whenever you create a new document. So what we'll do is we'll go up to the upper corner, and from the options we'll select new color swatch. And now the swatch name, okay, so this is going to name with the color value. So this is our RGB triplets, red, green, and blue, 40, 138, and 211. If you didn't want this, you could take this away, and you could name this color whatever you like, okay? And you can always come and see the RGB colors here, the color triplets here. And by the way, here's the hexadecimal, the RGB hexadecimal, if we were using this in web. All right, so I'm going to go back, name with color value, and I'll just leave this color type process, okay? And our color mode is RGB, okay? As opposed to one of these other mini color modes. So let's click OK. We now have added our color chip to our colors, so they will be available to us. Okay, let's go ahead and close. Now, what I want to do is I want my blue behind the plus sign. All right, so let's go up to our layers. There's more than one way to do this, but we'll go to our layers. I'll go to headline, and here's the tone and manner text. Here's our text frame, that was the plus sign, and here's our circle. So let's just take our circle, drag our circle down. It's now behind, so we can close our layers. I'm going to, with the select tool, click and drag a marquee over the two, okay? And I want to align these two. So I'm going to select or place a focus on one of them. So if I click the plus sign, whoops, make sure these are both selected here. All right, something's not right, just a sec. Okay, I think my issue is I still have this vector art inside of this text block, and that's creating a bit of an issue. So I'm going to select the plus sign, the vector art, and I'm going to copy. Then I'll deselect, edit, paste, and now if I double click, this should just be vector art. So I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to delete that plus sign. So now when I select the two of these, and I should see in my property the align, and if it's not already open, you can expand the options, and you can see that you can align objects, and you can distribute objects, and you can distribute and call out the space between them. So what I'm going to do is all right, so I select the two. It might be helpful to zoom in, and then I'm going to click on the circle, and you'll notice that the circle has a highlight, so the circle is in focus. So when we do our alignment, the alignment will force the plus sign to align with the circle, where the circle is. So let's go ahead and align horizontal, and we will also align vertical, and then we'll deselect. And this looks pretty close. All right, so I'm going to select my plus sign, go to my fill color, and I'm going to choose paper because there's actually not white. What happens is you're dealing with the substrate color. So we're just assuming that we're going to print on a white sheet of paper, but it's really the substrate color, okay, of whatever you're printing on. So let's select paper. Then I'll click and drag a marquee over the two, and then we're going to go to object, and we are going to group. And I should also point out you can transform. You can also arrange elements. So I use the layers to arrange, but you can arrange, send forward, send backwards here, okay? So what we're going to do is group this element, and now the two are one, okay? So when I select, they move together. If you double click, then you go back to the individual files, okay? So by grouping, they'll move together. Let's go ahead and zoom out, and we're going to take our plus sign, and I want you to visually place your plus sign. If you need to change the scale, then go ahead and select your grouped object and either use absolute or relative units to scale your plus sign. And ideally, what you want to have happen, you could also grab one of the corners, okay? So I'm going to grab the bottom corner, I'm going to press Command, and this time I'm going to press Option and hold the Shift key. And so I'm going to constrain the scale. I'm going to scale from the center. And what I want is the top of the circle to just break over the cap height. and just break under the baseline. So maybe something like this. And I'll just use my arrow keys to move this down. And you can even drag a guide like so. And it's a little more to the top, and it's always better weight-wise to have the bias to the bottom. So maybe I need to make this just a little bit smaller, like so. And then I'll use the arrow keys and slightly move this up. Then we can go up to the View menu, and we can Grids, Guides, hide the guides. And there's a shortcut for doing this, but I'll just hide the guides for a moment. And then we will zoom out, and we now have our tone and manner headline. The last part is we're just going to put a color block behind our tone and manner. So let's go and get our rectangle tool. I'll zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner like so, and click and drag a box approximately this height. Mine's about 95 pixels. So 95 to 100 pixels-ish should be fine. Now we're going to go over to stroke, and we're going to set none. We'll go to fill, and what we're going to do is just add a light gray. Okay, so I could use one of my color chips, or we can just go up to new color swatch, and this will be RGB. We can name this with our color value, and if we have all three values the same, then we should end up with the gray. So try this, 33, 33, 33. Okay, now this will be a very dark gray. So if we try 200, 200, 200, we'll end up with a lighter gray. So I'm going to let you decide what value of gray. I'll go with this 200. And let's go ahead and click OK. And we should now have our gray available. Get your selection tool. Okay. We can right click on our gray field, and we should be able to arrange and either send it backward or send it all the way to the back. And that's a way of basically having our rectangle go to the very bottom of the layers in our headline layer. All right, so let's close our layers panel, and it'd be a good idea to save. And we now have created our headline.